This week on Off the Air, Matt Murphy.
All right, a pleasure to be joined now by Matt Murphy, WFUV alum, and also voice of the Delaware Blue Coats. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. This has been a really cool podcast. I've enjoyed listening to the episodes. You've had a lot of great guests, so I'm really happy to be joining you and excited for this one.
And we're more than happy to have you as well. Matt, obviously been a crazy few months with the coronavirus and quarantine. How have you been able to keep busy during these crazy times?
Yeah, from a work standpoint, I've been fortunate. I've had the chance to branch out a little bit and do some things with some of the other Harris Blitzer sports and entertainment properties that own the Sixers. They own the New Jersey Devils in the NHL. They also own a few esports properties as well. So I've gotten to do some NBA 2K League stuff with our 76ers gaming club, 76ers GC. So some reporting on them during their season. Got to do some things as well with the Sixers on the public relations side during the playoffs. And that's on top of the day-to-day with the Blue Coats during our G League off season. So had a lot of great opportunities. Obviously, it's a tough time for a lot of people, but I was fortunate to stay busy from that perspective. And then I guess away from work, doing what I can to stay in shape, playing a little bit of golf, also playing pickleball. I don't know if you guys are familiar with pickleball.
Of course.
It's kind of like, like for those who don't know, tennis meets ping pong, I guess, like a quarter of a tennis court and a net about the same size. So if pickleball ever gets added to the Olympics, I've got a head start on training to be a Olympian in pickleball.
Where are you at in your golf game?
I don't have an official handicap or anything yet, but I enjoy playing golf, and I just played in a scramble this past weekend where we were 4 under as a group through 9 holes, finished 5 under, but the champions were 12 under, so not really that close, but it's coming along.
There you go. Back to the work side, you mentioned the stuff you've been able to do to stay busy during this time. You also do a lot of communication stuff with the Blue Coats as well. How much has all of that opened your eyes to different aspects of the industry?
A lot. The good thing about the G League is you get the chance to do a lot of different things and learn a lot of different skills. I guess it's similar to minor league baseball in that way. A lot of WFUV alums go that route as well. But we're familiar as broadcasters and beat reporters with things like game notes, but you're the one doing them. And as a broadcaster, you kind of know what you'd like to see in them. So it opens your eyes from that perspective. It's a lot of work, but it's super helpful to be able to learn all these different things, because especially nowadays, you have to be as versatile as possible to contribute to organizations. And I think you'll only see that more going forward. It's a very digital space. Having social media skills is important. Having video and reporting skills and things like that on top of skills that we learned at WFUV, like play-by-play. So it's very cool to see everything WFUV has done in the few years since I've been gone in terms of video and this podcast and so many different things, because the more skills you have, the better. Make yourself as versatile as possible so that you can adjust to really anything. And I think now is the biggest example of that everyone's gotten creative with content. So in Delaware, I not only do the play-by-play on TV and some on the radio, but I do the social media for the Delaware Blue Coats. And I also do many of the communications responsibilities, such as the media relations and public relations components that include things like the game notes, media guide, and all that. So it is crucial, and I've had a lot of great opportunities.
Matt, you are the youngest voice in the G League. So first off, congratulations on that title. Very impressive what you're doing at such a young age. Take us through the process of what it was like to going through the job process of getting this job, and what your 2+ years there has been like so far.
So I have told the story before, but I'll add a WFUV wrinkle at the end for you guys. I was sending my stuff around, seeing what would stick. And I'm from the South Jersey area, so I grew up with the Sixers. I knew about the Blue Coats in the G League. So I sent my tape out, ended up getting a chance to meet with some people there at the Sixers training complex in Camden, which is something I'll never forget. That was a really cool moment. But the WFUV tie comes in to our workshops. Anyone who's familiar with WFUV Sports knows that Bob Ahrens and now Bobby C and everybody, I mean, Marty Glickman before that, it was always about bringing people in who could help the broadcasters and people who do so many things in the WFUV Sports department in the form of workshops where a professional broadcaster or someone in the field comes in and gives you advice. And Doc Emmerich did a few while I was at Fordham. And in one of those, he said that it's very important to do your research on the person who is going to be interviewing you. So when I spoke with the Blue Coats, part of that process was I had it flipped on me to do the interview, to interview the interviewer. So if I hadn't remembered what Doc Emmerich had said during a WFUV workshop, I wouldn't have prepared as much information and research on the person I was going to be meeting with. And it turned out that was like the main thing that they wanted to see, if I could conduct myself in that way. And it worked out. I came in with a lot of information for that part of the process because of what I learned from Doc Emmerich at Fordham. So it all came full circle during the process of getting in with the Blue Coats.
I think you mentioned an important point is that you're from that South Jersey area, and now you're with the Blue Coats. You do some stuff with Alvernia Football as well. Not only being able to land that job essentially right out of college, but to have it be in your backyard per se. How cool has that been?
It's been awesome. I say it a lot, like you don't know where you're going to end up, but it was somewhere I wanted to look first because I grew up in the area. The fans are super passionate. So to be in with the Sixers organization over the last few years has been an incredible journey. It's been a really exciting time for the franchise, and I'm grateful for it. It's helped me in a lot of different ways in terms of my development. I've had a great support system around me because of it, whether it's family or friends, and I'm still close enough to even my high school and college geographically, so I can get to Fordham to do certain things, and I can see old friends and talk to old mentors and colleagues. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, because it is a grind when you're starting out in this business. So I think having the ability to be located close to home early in my career has really benefited me from the standpoint of that support system, because I'm young and I'm grinding, but I've been able to get through it a little bit better because I'm close to home at the beginning.
Matt, let's go to pre-FUV days. Was there a specific moment for you that really made you realize you wanted to be a broadcaster, or was this something that was kind of always a passion for you early on?
I wouldn't say that I was passionate about broadcasting before college, and I think that's a testament to WFUV. I was always passionate about sports. So I get to Fordham, and like many people, you hear more and more about the WFUV program. You're maybe during the club fair time or the first few weeks, and you just keep hearing all these stories. So I didn't know I wanted to be on air until probably closer to my sophomore year of college. But I had heard so many good things. My dad is a New York native. He had grown up listening to things like One on One and knew a lot of the alums. So it kind of came together after I got onto campus. And when you start getting on air, that kind of fueled my fire. And then you keep hearing the names and of the famous alums. I mean, for me, now looking back, you hear the names Mike Breen, Ryan Rucco, Chris Carino, Spiro Ditas, like focusing in on the basketball side of things and realizing, hey, I can do this. I'm where they were. I think for me, that was the biggest thing. And now those people are colleagues in some respects, or more importantly, mentors for me on the NBA scene. So I think it developed over time early in my college career.
How much did Bob Ahrens specifically help you realize that?
I credit so much to Bob Ahrens. And there's a lot of funny stories too. We could talk about his driving. I know that's been a big theme of this podcast, but keeping it play-by-play, X's and O's, that type of thing right here. Everything that I learned about improving my play-by-play came from Bob, and he would critique my demos, and you guys know the drill, and so many people know the drill. We're one-on-one with him, listening to your stuff most of the time in his office or whatever it was, but literally everything that I used during college to get better at play-by-play came from Bob when I was getting my early reps, even before like my senior year. So everything I learned during the demo stages of that. So I can't even pinpoint like one piece of advice that he gave me. It was really all of it, but he was around for so many like important moments, and his connections helped me so much. Some of the biggest interviews I've ever done to this point in my career, Marv Albert and Adam Silver, and both of those were because of Bob's relationships, and Bob was standing 5 feet to my left or right, with Marv over the phone and with Adam Silver in person. He was right there, and he was responsible for so much. So it was his tips when it comes to the mechanics of play-by-play. It was his relationships in the New York City area that really, really helped expedite the process for me.
I know you wanted to stay on the topic of play-by-play and X's and O's, but we can't go without mentioning Bob without a great Bob story. Do you have one story that sticks out? Just what it could be about anything with Bob, because obviously there's so much when it comes to Bob Ahrens.
I spent a lot of time with him covering, if you're a beat reporter at Fordham for WFUV for either the NFL, the Jets, or the Giants, during my time, Bob would be at almost every game with you. So I spent a lot of time with him my senior year covering the Jets. I also had the Cooperstown experience where he was driving, that Dan DiOrio mentioned in an earlier episode of this podcast, where he was reversing on the shoulder of the highway. But I will say, I'll keep it a little bit inspirational, I guess, at least for myself. I remember hearing Ryan Rupko say something during one of the FUV workshops. He told us that during one of his workshops at Fordham, I think it was Gary Cohen, said, "You can do this." And I remember a lot of our alums saying, if Bob tells you, hey, you can do this, or this, get serious about this early in your college career because you have what it takes, that was an important step. So I remember being in Bob's office probably my sophomore year going over a basketball demo, and he looked at me and said, "You can do this." And that was all I needed to hear at the time. So I would say that's one of my memories of Bob that sticks with me the most. Him giving me his seal of approval. Obviously, I had a long way to go at that time, and I still have a long way to go. But that meant a lot to me at the time, and it still does.
You can't reference Bob without thinking about the impact he's had in facilitating those professional relationships with the New York market teams, and then getting WFUV into places like the Super Bowl and the NFL draft. You had the opportunity to cover both of those things. And at Super Bowl 52, you saw your hometown team win a Super Bowl that you were covering. Plenty of people reference the kind of unreal out-of-body experiences they have at FUV that can't be replicated. Was that for you?
It definitely was. So we've talked about me being from the Philadelphia area. My dad, I also referenced, is not from the Philadelphia area, but he, like many people who live in this area, all you hear about is the Eagles, the Eagles, the Eagles. So he still followed the Eagles, and I was able to FaceTime him from the field after the Eagles had won the Super Bowl. And I just remember seeing the smile on his face, like that I was on the field at the Super Bowl covering it. It was really cool. I tried to FaceTime my brother as well, but he was, I think, on Broad Street celebrating the Eagles' victory, and his phone didn't have service, but he still regrets not being able to show his friends the live scene via FaceTime from the field. But that was so cool. It was one of the many great events that I got to cover because of WFUV. A lot on the basketball side as well, but unbelievable for the timing to work out where it's the Eagles in the Super Bowl. My senior year, we were there for a week on Radio Row. Tom Scavelli, James Corrigan, Dan DiOrio, Charlie Maizano, so many great memories with those guys, particularly Tom and Dan during my senior year. And that was definitely, if not the best highlight, I would say it was the best highlight, getting to be there in Minnesota, covering the lead up to the game, and then the Eagles beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Matt, obviously you've mentioned a lot of great FUV experiences so far. And in addition to that, you talked about your relationship with Tom and Dan specifically, which it seemed like you guys were pretty much a trio on road trips everywhere for men's basketball senior year. What was it like being able to work with those two specifically? Obviously they're at Barstool now and you've kind of gone your own path, but what was the experience being able to work with those two like?
It was a great experience. We had the student section podcast. Never forget the college basketball podcast, the student section. And it was me, Tom, Dan, James Decker for a period, who was a grade above us. I actually got the chance to catch up with Tom and Dan before the pandemic in New York City. I think it was January. So that was pretty cool. They're doing great things at Barstool. And if anybody hasn't listened to your episode with them, it was early on and it was a really good interview. They're doing great things. I'm really proud to see that. During our time at Fordham, it was a great time. Like I said, I mean, we got to go to so many cool places. I went to Jamaica. Tom and I, with John Furlong, got to do the Fordham men's basketball Jamaica Classic in Montego Bay. That was something I'll never forget. Me, Tom, and Dan got to do a Fordham men's game basketball at West Virginia when West Virginia was the number 10 team in the country. And then I remember, to tie it into the student section podcast, we were always looking for guests. I remember being home in Philly and kind of driving Tom and Dan. I say home in Philly, just outside Philly is my home, but I remember being in Philly and driving Tom and Dan around to show them some of it. It was like a Friday night. Fordham was going to play St. Joe's, and we had the call the next day. We were always looking for guests for our show, and we said, hey, maybe we can talk to Joe Lenardi and get him on because he's the radio analyst for St. Joe's. And we'll say, we'll talk to him during shoot-around or pregame and try to get him on at halftime. Well, as it turns out, the Friday night before, we're just driving down Lancaster Avenue in suburban Philadelphia and like outside of Philadelphia near Villanova. And Joe Lenardi's walking down the street. He was probably the only person on the street. And we pull up next to him and ask him if he wants to come on our halftime show the next day. So it was just a weird coincidence there. But everything goes back to the relationships you have at WFUV and getting to do the podcast with Tom and Dan, getting to go to so many different events with those guys and others from my class on the college basketball side, on the professional side, just memories that I'll never forget.
Matt, your work doing play-by-play at FUV culminated in winning the Marty Glickman Award in 2018. How much did that honor mean to you, and how much did it help you in your early career?
It meant so much. I consider Fordham the top sports broadcasting school in the country, and you guys know the drill. We apply to get in, and you have to get accepted into it. It's a professional radio station with such a storied history. I still have the email from Bob Ahrens when I was accepted to the program as a freshman because it just felt big. I didn't even know everything that I was going to go on and get to do, but I still saved that email. I still have it. I'll probably frame it someday because it felt big to be a part of WFUV. So to be in the group of people who were fortunate enough to win the Glickman Award, I'm honored and grateful to be a part of that group. And I often think of the message on the trophy from Marty Glickman to consider the listener. I know Chris Carino, the voice of the Nets, talked about that when you guys interviewed him. Definitely a message that I think about a lot. And then from the standpoint of that group that I'm associated with, and Emmanuel, I know you're a two-time winner now, so that's awesome. The group that we're associated with, the first name on the plaque that my name is on, I believe it's the first. It might be the second, but let's call it the first. The first name on the Glickman plaque is Spiro Ditas in 2001, and the last name on the plaque is me until they switched plaques, but the last name on the plaque is me in 2018, and Spiro has been a great mentor to me, like so many people on the NBA circuit. He ends up becoming the voice of the Lakers at age 25, so a great person for me to look up to, and yeah, to win that award in 2018, just super grateful for that opportunity.
Matt, before we left to go, let's shift over to kind of what's going on in the world right now. And obviously a unique format for the NBA, playing in a bubble, playing their postseason in a bubble. Obviously it's been a kind of a crazy first round with everything that has happened. What's overall been your opinion of the basketball that's been going on and kind of everything with the boycotts to Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell going at it? What's been your opinion of the bubble so far?
It's been really cool to see how well, first of all, how great of a job the league has done to put it on, and then more importantly, how well the players and coaches have done with getting their messages across during that period, because it's such a big platform. And I think the idea of hope, I couldn't be more hopeful for the next few years in the sports industry and what's to come. Sure, it might be calling games off monitors like so many people in the bubble are doing. I know a handful of them are there as well. But whether it's on monitors, in person, there's just so many opportunities to use the platform of sports. I think the future is bright. I think this is a time for us all in the industry to grow. The NBA is growing right now, and those players are using their platform very well, like I said. And this is where we grow, and I'm proud to be growing with it. I think the future is really bright. So I'm very hopeful for what the next 5 years or more are going to look like.
Matt, before we get you out of here, there are a couple of overarching questions we'll sometimes leave our interview subjects off with. We'll leave you with this. WFUV's remained strong for so many years through so many different eras. If there was one piece of advice you could pass down to the next generation, maybe a freshman walking on campus for the first time this year, about how FUV remains strong into the future, what would that be?
I'm going to borrow advice from Tony Reale, another WFUV Sports alum. Say yes to everything, even if it's something that you're not sure of. I wasn't even sure that I wanted to be on air at first. I thought I was going to be a producer my freshman year, but I said yes to a hockey podcast, and I liked being behind the microphone. Has nothing to do with what I do now on the play-by-play side, but it does have to do with my on-air broadcasting career. Say yes to everything. You never know until you try it. And just keep at it, keep working hard, but don't close any doors. Give everything a chance. And yeah, say yes to everything.
A great time as always getting to catch up with Matt Murphy. Glad to consider him a friend and also a mentor to all of us in this industry. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. Glad to see you're doing well, and best of luck with everything going forward.
Great catching up with you guys. Keep up the great work. Thank you for having me.